My top 10 tips to help you become an amazing guitarist continues. Next up is tip number 6, master scales. Scales. I have to admit, when I looked at my top 10 list this morning and saw that today's topic is about mastering scales, I was not overly enthusiastic about this. Some guitarists love scales in theory, while others are less enthusiastic. I'm less enthusiastic. But scales are an important tool of my trade. You don't need to love your hammer to be a good carpenter. The same holds true with scales. Spoiler alert, next week's topic is learn to improvise lead guitar. And that's not going to happen without understanding the pentatonic scale. This simple scale provides the framework for lead guitar. So briefly, here's the strategy. Begin with the 5 pentatonic scale patterns. There are only 5 notes in each pattern, and they are the same 5 notes, no halftones. The pentatonic scale can be used as the melodic foundation of any composition. Rock and roll and blues stop being rock and roll and blues when you move beyond the simple pentatonic scale. Sure, the 7-note diatonic scale can be used over blues progressions, but the melody of this more complex scale isn't authentic blues. Blues is the basis for rock and roll and classic rock. Hard rock and metal are typically influenced by classical music, which is associated with more complex scales like the diatonic scale. To master the pentatonic scale, you need to learn all 5 positions and be able to move them up and down the neck to change keys. Don't just practice the scale. Practice the scale while playing over chord progressions. Introduce licks, shapes, sequences, and arpeggios from the scale so your composition is melodic. Practicing scales over chord progressions is much more fun than just running through them with a metronome. Even so, a metronome has its place too. Some practice time needs to be allotted to repetition so you're able to play scales automatically. Once the pentatonic scale is mastered, the next step is to add the 2 half steps to all 5 patterns to form the more complex diatonic scale. This scale will open up many doors. The diatonic scale is 7 different modes that use the same 5 patterns, fingering, and notes. A simple trick will allow you to quickly expand to unlimited possibilities and endless choices. This lesson isn't metal, but it sure is rock and roll. The exercises in this lesson are like going to a restaurant and having steak prepared 4 different ways. It's all good, and just when you thought you were full, they bring out the ribeye. Well, this lesson features 4 different flavors of the 1-4-5 chord progression that's the basis for 50s rock. Exercise 1 is a simple acoustic version of the progression. The side benefit is it gives you an opportunity to practice open chords using a common strum pattern. You'll notice my thumb over the neck on both the C and D chords. I use my thumb to mute the 6th and 5th strings on the D chord, mute the 6th string with the C chord. Here's exercise 1 with the tab. Exercise 2 is the same, 1-4-5 progression in the same key, G, with the exact same rhythm. This is a little more aggressive, and it's faster. This time we're using 5th type intervals, power chords. I recommend fretting the entire bar chord for practice. Plus, If you play too many strings, you're still in key. So if I'm playing the G, the full bar, and I only intend to play the 6th and 5th strings, if I happen to hit the 4th and 3rd strings, at least they're in key, won't sound incorrect. Now, this riff also sounds good with a little bit of palm muting. So now I'll play it for you slowly. Here's exercise 2 with the animated tab. With exercise 3, we begin to play some real rock and roll. All you do is add the pinky. You're just adding the pinky. And also notice I'm muting it a bit. When you get together with some friends for a jam session, this is a simple one to get things started. If it's not heavy enough, use a drop D tuning with additional distortion. Rock and roll can still sound relevant. I almost said modern, but decided that I better back off that one. A playing style that dates back to the 50s probably isn't going to sound modern, so I'll stick with relevant. Exercise 3 with the animated tab is right here. One other thing I want to mention is my pinky is actually lightly touching the higher string. So when I'm in this position, my pinky is on the 4th string, 7th fret. Well, it's deadening the 3rd string. So that will help you play it and keep it sounding clean. So you should clearly hear the note on the 4th string, but deadened on the higher string. It's true here too. 4th string is deadened there. For exercise 4, we add the flat 7. I call this one full-on rock and roll because it is just that. The flat 7 completes the sound. It's also the blues connection, as you'll see when we move into that realm. Now this is a little hard to explain. Okay, right there I am strumming the 5th and 4th strings, and this is where the 7th sound comes in. And then when you go to the D, still exactly the same. I'll do a real close-up here so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Now that you tried to play along with that, you're probably incredibly frustrated. Exercise 4 is difficult. It's okay to be a bit sloppy on this one. Also, play around with exercise 4, but don't expect to master it. I put it in this lesson because it expands on the other exercises. As I said at the beginning of this, it's another flavor of rock and roll, and the main flavor. So for now, it's enough just to understand the technique. There's no need to perfect this before moving on. Exercise 5 uses a 2-string bar to play hammers and pulls. You can be creative with this shape and make them actually a major part of your lead improvisations. I'm barring the 1st and 2nd strings and pulling off and hammering. Then I move to the 3rd and 4th strings, and it's the same type of movement. I'm barring the 3rd and 4th strings and doing the exact same movement. You might even want to steal a trick from Jeff Beck's playbook. Throw away the pick and use your fingers. See my first finger and thumb. It's also easier to mute notes and keep this clean when playing with your fingers. Here's exercise 5 with the tab. That's the end of this lesson. You've got plenty to keep you busy this week. Be sure to practice at least an hour a day, 5 days a week. See you next week.